Yay, thank you so much. Thank you. And those events that you have coming up look pretty interesting. I think I'll tune in. So yes, everybody. So the title of my talk is called "The Truth About Copilot," but I won't bury the lead here. My truth here is that it can help you to level up your career. So just a couple questions. Feel free to type it in the chat. True or false? Did I write that tweet with Copilot or not? Am I just lying? Just put your guess in the chat or answer in your head. And then also, true or false? You can use GitHub Copilot to cultivate your career, your engineering career, to be specific, at any level. Obviously, my answer here is true. But throughout this workshop, we'll go ahead and figure out if, like, my opinion is true. We're going to go ahead and debunk this. A couple things we'll cover. If you're not familiar with GitHub Copilot, I'm going to explain what GitHub Copilot is. I'll talk about how to use it. I'll talk about how I believe it's leveled up your career. I'll talk about my own personal experiences with it. And we're going to go ahead and create a tweet with Copilot on our own, if the demo gods are on my side. So very quickly, my name is Rizel. I'm a developer advocate at GitHub. I was a software engineer prior to that. I also helped to run a nonprofit called G Code, which teaches women of color and non-binary people of color to code. And if you ever see me on social media, I'm pretty addicted to Twitter. So go ahead and follow me at Black Girl Bites on Twitter, Instagram, dev.2 and #node. And then for Twitch, I'm Black Girl Bites 1 because I got myself locked out of my original account because I forgot my password. All right, so let's figure out what GitHub Copilot is. It is an AI peer programmer that helps you write code faster with less work. So if you're like, whoa, that sounds crazy, it's really not magic. It can sometimes feel like it, but it's not going to take your jobs or anything because it can't work without an actual software engineer with their hands on the keyboard. From using it, I realized it really can't read my mind at all, and it doesn't always spit out perfectly well written, up to date code, but it is really effective. And I'll show you how. And if you're struggling with understanding or envisioning what Copilot could really look like, it's very similar, or I like to think of it as like how Gmail has Smart Compose, which gives you predictive text. So in the image below, we see like Jacqueline saying, "Hey," or someone's emailing Jacqueline saying, "Hey, Jacqueline, hope I haven't seen you in a while." And then Gmail or Smart Compose is predicting that they want to say, "And I hope you're doing well." So how it works is that GitHub Copilot is drawing context from comments and code, and it's suggesting either individual lines or little chunks of functions while you type. And it's being powered by OpenAI's Codex. All right, so let's talk about the various features. So everybody knows the predictive code feature. This is literally a screenshot from me writing a comment that says, write a binary search algorithm. And then I write the first lines, and then GitHub Copilot starts auto-completing or assuming what I'm going to write. Here's another feature that I don't think people are aware of, and I wasn't aware of until very recently. If it gives you a suggestion that you're not into, there's multiple times where I've been like, that's not what I'm trying to do, Copilot. You can see other suggestions. If you hover over the suggested text, it'll pop up this dialog that you see here where you can switch between the next and previous suggestions that it has, or you can go ahead and click open up GitHub Copilot, and it will open a tab for you that has multiple suggestions. Also, in terms of other features they have, so there's a Copilot extension, but there's also a Copilot Labs extension, and it's an experimental feature that we have going on, but I think it's really excellent. One of the things that it allows you to do is translate from a snippet of code from one programming language to another. So in this example, I copied some JavaScript code that I wrote with Copilot on doing that binary search algorithm. And I said, I want to translate this to Python, and this is what it spit out. I'm not a Pythonista, but y'all tell me if this looks right or not. Also, it has an explanation feature, which I think is really awesome and useful. Basically, you can put in snippets of code, and it'll write out step by step what's going on for you. I think it's helpful if you're new to a language. So basically, here it says we're declaring two variables. We're initializing a low low to 0 and high to the length of the array, just giving you a little bit more of explanation in some human readable language. Okay, so these are cool features, but how is it useful for me? How will it even help to level up my career? I don't know about y'all, but my goals as a software engineer are always to get better and faster at coding and to write cleaner code. I also want to write good documentation because I think that's really important as a software engineer. I want to be a better mentor and mentee as I continue to gain seniority in my career. And I want to be able to pick up new concepts quickly because I know our industry is changing. Like one day we have React hooks, next day we have bun.js. I want to be able to pick those things up as I transition from job to job or as my company adopts new technologies. Crazy enough, or coincidentally, Copilot has helped me to do all these things, and I believe it can help me to continue to level up in these ways. And I will show you how, right? So for coding faster and cleaner, Copilot is really, really good at recognizing patterns. So if you're doing API calls or you're even designing an API or you're writing unit tests, once you write maybe the first 2 lines or the first two functions, it's gonna get a hang of what you're doing. It's going to be like, oh, okay, Rizel was doing a get request. Now she wants to do a post request. I imagine she'll want to hit this URL and all that. It'll go ahead and predict that for me, which helps me to code a little bit faster. Also with syntax, it's really great at things like regex. I don't know about y'all, but for me, regex is really good, but I'm not going to memorize all those different little symbols. It's just not worth the brain space. I understand how it works, but I would just rather Google like how to do some of these regex simple stuff. But I feel like Copilot for me removes that step of me having to go Google. And if I write a comment that says, write some regex to validate a phone number, Copilot will do that for me. I don't think in any situation that's something that I'll need to memorize as long as I know that that's a concept or a thing that I can do. Also with comments, I think this is the key to Copilot. When I see people complain, I'm like, you're not writing good comments. You get the best results from Copilot when you write clear, understandable comments, which then in turn makes your code cleaner. Because to me, if an AI can understand what you're trying to do based on your comment, then a human can as well. And let me talk about my personal experience, right? I'm a messy coder. Like if you looked at my code, you would be like, girl, it works, but how? I don't understand how. So a couple months ago, I'm still new at GitHub, but we collaborated with the Visual Studio Code team at Microsoft, and they were like, hey, we want someone to build a VS Code extension, and they were like, let Rizel do it. And I was like, yeah, sure. But I was a little nervous because I was like, now everyone's going to see my really bad code and I have to show it to people that are even beyond my team. But I used Copilot during it just because I was like, what is Copilot? I want to try it out. And after I submitted my repository, or shared my repository with the team, I was really pleasantly surprised to get an email back from a principal developer advocate at Microsoft that said, Rizel, your code is gorgeous, so easy to read and well commented. Love it. I've never gotten a comment like that before on any of my code. So I really think Copilot helped me out there, especially since I'd never written a VS Code extension before. I think me making sure that I was writing clear comments so that Copilot will be able to help me with the architecture of that VS Code extension made it seem as though I wrote really clean, clear code. And so for my trick, right, I see a lot of people say, I'm frustrated. Sometimes GitHub Copilot starts suggesting things to me and I don't need it. I say turn it off in that moment, right? Especially when you're laying down the initial structure of your project. I turn GitHub Copilot off. And then once I have a pattern going, I know the logic, I know the things that I want it to do, I'll turn it back on and have it autofill those moments. And of course, I'll still pay attention to what it's writing. I'm not just going to blindly accept it. I'm strategic about how I use Copilot. I found another awesome example as well. So I wrote a blog post the other day and someone commented that it was really good at helping them do these translations for these strings. I think this is amazing, right? As a software engineer, you're not losing the learning experience, because there's no situation where this person or individual needs to write out in Japanese manually or needs to go Google that, right? But GitHub Copilot, it saved them some time by just autofilling the translations in French and Japanese and all the other languages. I also talked about it being good for documentation and helping you level up in writing good documentation. As software engineers, I don't think we're the best at it, but we can always use improvement. So if you're writing documentation and markup and you turn on GitHub Copilot, it's good. And let me show you some examples. Here is Mike McQuaid saying that GitHub Copilot's so smart or so good that it already inferred that for his on-call documentation, they should reach out to him at his GitHub handle. There's another example here where Hayden Barnes is writing some install instructions, and it has the command on how to install this project on SUSE. There's also here, this person is an advocate at Microsoft, and he admits that half of the documentation for the static web app CLI has been written with Copilot, which I thought was amazing. So it's great for documentation. As we can see, I haven't gotten a chance to write too much documentation, but just seeing these testimonials about it just makes me know like it's doing a great job. Also in being a better mentor and mentee. So I like to be vulnerable. I'm going to admit to y'all, I'm not great at peer programming. When I find it useful because I learn a lot, but I tend to get really nervous when I'm pairing with someone who I believe is like way more advanced than me. All of a sudden, I lose everything out of my mind and I can no longer type. I found that having GitHub Copilot activated helps me, because now I don't have to focus on the syntax and worry that, oh my gosh, this person's watching me not be able to spell the word function all of a sudden, or not be able to map an array. But now GitHub Copilot's auto-populating or auto-completing that for me, and I'm still able to focus on the logic and work with the mentor. And then on the flip side, when I'm the mentor, as I mentioned earlier, I worked at a nonprofit, or I currently do, helping women of color get introduced to code. I normally teach them HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then they go off and they get a job of their own. And then they come back and they're like, hey, I need help with C#. I don't know C#. And I'm like, whoa, I can't help you. But I found GitHub Copilot to be helpful, where I can take that translation extension from Copilot Labs, copy and paste code snippets, and I get a better understanding when I translate it into JavaScript. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what you're doing. I can help you out. So here's another example of me gaining some confidence while peering. I paired with my manager. There was like this text file with some usernames in alphabetical order, and what I wanted to do was every time we added a new username, it'll get inserted in the correct alphabetical position. I got nervous at that point. I was like, oh my gosh, sounds scary. And I knew the logic, but I just started to forget the syntax. But once I wrote out some of these comments, it filled out the lines of code for me, and I just double checked as I wrote. I was like, okay, yes, I think that is exactly what I want to do, and I did it step by step, and then I went ahead and tested it. I didn't just accept it for what it was. And then also, last but not least, gaining that context for new concepts. I think it's great for studying for interviews. There's moments where I'm doing leak code problems or code wars, and I get a little bit stuck. And sometimes it's nice to work backwards, like maybe using Copilot to autocomplete or suggest how you can probably solve the problem. And then looking at that and being like, okay, I'm going to, now that I've seen the solution, I'm going to go ahead and test myself. And then you can also use that explanation feature to help you understand what it suggested. This way you're not just stuck, and it keeps you moving throughout your studying process. Also, it's helpful if you're navigating a new code base. You're new to a project, or you're new to a company, you can go ahead and take little snippets of code if you something that's like what are they doing here? This looks wild. I've never seen people use the spread operator this way or something like that. You can take that snippet of code, use the explain feature, and gain a little bit more context. Also, it's been helpful for me with demos as an advocate. As I mentioned before, with the VS Code extension, I had to quickly learn how to write a VS Code extension using TypeScript, and Copilot helped me out there. But there's another example as well where I paired with the Twitter DevRel team, and they wanted me to show myself using Copilot with Twitter's API v2. And I was like, okay, cool, I could do that, until I realized they wanted me to use Tweepy, which is a Python library. And I was like, oh no, it's in a couple of days and I don't know Python. So using GitHub Copilot really helped me out. And here's just a screenshot of me celebrating on Twitter that it helped me to write Python. Yeah, Python's not like a crazy difficult to understand language, but with a few days and strangers watching me, it helped me get the job done. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and use Copilot to write a tweet. Hopefully my screen sharing doesn't get messed up here. Let me go back and let me share this window. Okay, perfect. So I already have some of it written in just for time's sake and just because demoing Copilot can be a little tricky. But as we can see, I've already used it to help me import the Tweepy library. I used it to help me import a config file where I have like my secrets and stuff like that. And then I have this passing in the parameters or arguments for each of my tokens. So what I'm gonna do here is I left this empty for a reason, because I want us to see GitHub Copilot going ahead and suggesting that already. It already knows, because I've been using this pattern of config.consumer key, config.consumer secret. It knows now that I want to use config.access token secret. But we can also say, if we didn't like the suggestion, we can open up GitHub Copilot and it'll open up this tab where we can see multiple solutions. It may take a bit. Okay, cool. So here it's saying, hey, maybe you didn't want to do this and you wanted to do something else. Here's a few suggestions here. And none of these are really what I want, but it can also help you to just brainstorm a little bit and think. But we're going to accept this first suggestion that it's given me. And we're going to go to the next line. Now it already knows, if you notice, I didn't write that comment. It knows that I want to send a tweet. So we're going to go ahead and accept that. And now it has client.update status / hello world. Now this is nice, but it's actually using Twitter's API v1, not Twitter API v2, which is why I said GitHub Copilot is not perfect, right? So I want to prompt it a little bit more to send the right thing. And actually before this, I think I'm going to create a variable instead and pass in that variable into here. So we're going to create a string. So I'm going to say create a variable called tweet. Like, this is how specific that sometimes I want to get with Copilot, with a string that says, I wrote this tweet with Copilot and I'm in cfe.dev right now. Okay, so let's go to the next line and see what happens. Dang, it's already doing it, and it also even handled the escaping for me right here because I used single quotes in both places. So we have that all set. And now for sending a tweet. This is not necessarily how I want to do it. So maybe if I say with client.create tweet method, because that is the Twitter API v2 that they're using now. And then I say I want to pass in tweet as an argument. And here we go. It did it for me. Made a little bit of a mistake. I want to pass in text here because that's exactly what it's supposed to look like. And then let's say, it already knows that I want to print a message that says tweet sent. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Print tweet sent. And let's run this file in my terminal and we'll see if I tweet it out on Twitter. All right, so I'm gonna run it. Python 3 send tweet. It says that the tweet was sent successfully. And let me see if I can, now I have to go back to my browser. So much switching that I have to do. And let me pull up Twitter to see if it actually showed. Yes, it did. I'm going to show y'all. I'm so excited. Share screen, Chrome tab. And here we go, my Twitter. I'll zoom in a bit more, but here it is, 31 seconds ago. I wrote this tweet with Copilot, and I'm in CFE dev right now. So that worked, pretty exciting stuff. And we're almost done here. And thank you for dealing with the back and forth switches. So I'm going to go back to my slide deck. And I'm just going to talk about like, okay, I used Copilot to write a tweet and I was like, how could this really be practical? And I thought about something, right? If we take it a step further, we can send, I figured that open source maintainers can use this feature to send a tweet every time they label a good first issue. New contributors always struggle to find good first issues, and they just like don't know how to get started. So I think it's easier to make it more discoverable if your open source project has a Twitter account or you as a maintainer has one. You can go ahead and set up an action or a workflow that every time you label a good first issue, it'll tweet it out. And I actually tried it out myself. I'm not going to demo it straight here just for time's sake, but here is some of like a screenshot of the workflow I made, right? So I say on every issue, every time it's labeled, I want this to happen. And if the issue is labeled good first issue, then we'll run the code below. Basically here, I'm grabbing the issue that the event happens on. I set up Python, I check out the code in my repository, and then I run the lines that can get this going. So I run pip3 install tweetbee, and then I go ahead and run that file along with the API tokens that I have coming in. And here's a screenshot of the results. I was able to tweet out that this is a good first issue, and it was just a test issue that I put out there. But I think that's like a cool way to make something like this practical for you. Went backwards. But that's just all to say and wrap up that GitHub Copilot is perfect for leveling up your career at any level. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I want to thank Brian for giving me the space to talk. I'm really glad to just be able to exercise my knowledge and share with other people and to discuss with others as well. All right, thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you. So first of all, if anybody has any questions, I know Rizel has to get to she has another presentation to get to soon, but we do have a little bit of time for questions, so we're happy to answer some questions here. So I will ask my own while we wait and see if anybody has any. Because first of all, I realized watching that when I used Copilot during the beta and loved it, and I found that watching your presentation, I'm like, hey, maybe I was underutilizing, or maybe these features weren't there in the beta, because like, first of all, I didn't realize you could pull up the tab and see other suggestions. I didn't realize I could just comment. Like I was just seeing it as I typed. It was, giving me code suggestions, but I didn't realize you could do all this stuff to kind of really help, kind of guide it. So that is super cool. And I did also see a demo of the translation thing, and I'm like, wow, I mean, I don't think it's something I would use all the time, but it's more like you said, like if I want to understand a piece of code that's written in a language I don't really know, or help somebody else understand my code that's written in a language that they don't know, it's a great way to kind of do that. So that's really cool. Or to write Python when you don't know Python, as an example.
Yeah.
So,
No, I have the same sentiments. I was when I even though I'm a GitHub employee, I tried it out and I was like, okay, it just like auto completes my code. That's cool. And then I was like telling a product manager, I'm like, it doesn't even give me other suggestions. And he was like, yes, it does. And he showed me. So like I think just getting the chance to play around with it more, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I was not using this well.
yeah. So there's clearly a lot of features I mean, like, I think you just have to kind of get adjusted to and add them to your workflow.
Yeah.
So Meg did have a question about was there a learning curve? It's kind of related, I guess, to what we were talking about. Was there a learning curve in getting used to working with Copilot?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, because at first I was like, oh man, it's getting in my way. It keeps making me accept suggestions that I don't care about. But then I started like just especially because I think now that I'm a developer advocate and I'm not like, oh, I have to get this ticket out now. I have more time to explore and try out things with features. So I started being like, oh, what if I built this with it? Let me see if I change the way I work with it. What if I like deactivate it for this moment but turn it on for this moment? So I think yeah, there was a little bit of a learning curve, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'll admit I've tried other AI coding tools as well. There's not a lot, but there's a few options now. But they're all a little bit different. And I think, at first, if you're not used to it, it feels like the biggest thing for me, obviously I was underutilizing it, first of all, but second of all is trying to kind of, where it feels like sometimes it would get in your way, because it's suggesting things when you really like, I know what I'm doing here, stop, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
I think there's also ways you can kind of configure some of that stuff. And I'd say for me, the other learning curve was just realizing, like, because it would give me whole code blocks, and just recognizing when it was, um, they were always kind of like yours, where it's like, that's good, but that's not perfect. That's not
yeah,
right. I have to
yeah,
go in and adjust that, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
definitely. So let me get to some more questions. So um, I know Meg had another question, but I will say, like, uh, so just to kind of let you all know, Rizel obviously not a lawyer, and I know there are questions about the kind of licensing, and stuff with Copilot. So I think, I've kind of, it's kind of, I say, out of the our area here, in terms of answering those kind of questions. So I know people have those kind of questions. I know there are people within GitHub who we probably could direct those to, but Rizal
Yeah.
can more talk to the usage of it than the licensing of it. I know
Yes.
that was it. I stumbled through that, but that's
But
the easiest.
that's exactly yeah. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the legal things. I know the technical parts, and I'm happy to direct you to someone who will know more.
Right. So you can reach out to Rizal if you want to get like an email, or who to contact within GitHub to answer those kind of questions. But um, and I'm sorry if I butcher your name. Nustup asks, can Copilot suggest me things like, suppose I've written a function slash code, can it suggest me the best approach to follow in terms of improving time, space, complexity, so I can excel at competitive programming? I guess.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. You wanted to suggest you performant things.
yeah,
I haven't tried that out, but I think that would be interesting to like um experiment with. Like maybe what I would do is like maybe in my comment write something about performance and be like performant way to do a I don't know what a good example is right now. But yeah.
yeah. But I'm wondering, like you said, competitive programming. So I'm wondering if
Yeah, would that be
it's
cheating?
is there? I didn't even know there was such a thing as competitive programming. Maybe it's like a hackathon thing. If that's, I think. I mean, I think Copilot would be hugely useful in a hackathon environment, right? I mean,
Yeah.
unless they tell you, hey, you can't use this because we're competing and using Copilot is cheating. I don't know, but
Yeah,
maybe it's
yeah.
like,
Double check with the rules first before you turn on Copilot. Don't turn it on in an interview or anything, y'all.
yeah, we've talked about this at work. It's just like, do we allow people like to leave Copilot on if they're doing some kind of code test or something? And it's like,
Mm. Maybe
mm,
not.
it gets complicated, because it's like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I want to know that you know stuff on the one hand, but I also feel like, I mean, doing your job efficiently is like, hey, that's a skill, right?
That's true. That's true.
Um,
That's a
so
good perspective.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they voted no. You can't.
Up to the company.
Yeah. So, yeah, we guess, I could imagine it would be helpful in competitive programming. I just don't know. Is there a way you can configure it? Your comment thing would be like adding the comments to tell it to kind of guide it. I suppose be useful in that kind of scenario, right?
Yeah, I think so. As long because I've never done competitive programming, as long as they wouldn't get in trouble, but I think you can um, write a comment, say that you want the most performant solution or something, and experiment, play around with it, see if it gives you back the most performant solution.
And so, I guess I had one more question. So the explain thing, you just tell me more about, like, you just basically highlight the code and it will tell you what it
Yeah,
does.
yeah, I can show y'all
Oh, that
really
would be great because, like,
quickly.
I didn't even know it did that.
Yeah, it's actually a separate extension, and I forgot to show everybody this part. But there's two extensions. One is called regular Copilot, and then let me make this wider. The other one is called Copilot Labs. And so what that does when you have GitHub Copilot Labs installed is on the side, you'll have like these two little panels. And if you highlight the code, let's see if I highlight this. Hopefully it works well because this is more of an experimental, like in beta feature. And you'll have like the explain code feature. And if you press ask Copilot, it'll come out with results of like what's going on. This one is, yeah, this one's kind of just writing out my comments.
Yeah,
But let me see if code does the following is better. Yeah, I think it's easier or better to demo with something that's more of like an algorithm or something like this. Like this is a little bit more self-explanatory. But that's
right.
how this feature works. And then if I was to translate it into something else like JavaScript, I can do that as well, even though this is a Python library, so I'm not sure. But yeah. Yeah, this one's not gonna work out. Not great examples. But I have a couple. I have a blog post with better examples on how this would work. This is not for this demonstration right here, not the best one.
Right. Yeah, because
Yeah.
obviously you can't use a Python library in JavaScript anyway, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So one last question. I know you have to go soon.
Mhm.
Uh, so Meg asks, does Copilot and extensions slow down your computer at all? VS Code extensions can make my IDE wonky when too many are running.
Interesting. I haven't had that experience. I really
Okay.
haven't. Yeah. But
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. I'd say, like, my limited experience using it, there was no noticeable like slowdown in my computer. Honestly, the thing, it ran so fast that it was often, like I said, the tricky part was getting used to it because it's getting ahead of me, and it was like, oh wait, it's already got all my code written. What am I doing?
Yeah.
So, um, okay, well, excellent. I don't see any other questions, and I know you have to jump. I thought this was great, and I think your perspective on how to use the tool, not just in, like, giving you code hints, but just to help you learn and become a better developer, is like, it's really, that is, I think, a kind of a key. Let's put it this way: that's the secret sauce of these kind of tools. That I think, it's not going to fully write your application for you, but it can help you um, do things better and speed up the process. So,
Well said.
yeah.